Inclusive beauty is not inclusive. It's a lie. We've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, deceived. Hello, sunshine, and welcome back to Paradigm Shift with Ayanda, a place where we reframe what is and reimagine what could be. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let's paradigm shift together. Hello, sunshine, and welcome back to Beauty Bites. I love this series because it's where we think against beauty culture, beauty standards, beauty politics. And so I'm so excited to have this episode of Beauty Bites reaching your ears wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Let's do it together. I am enthused, delighted, entertained. I'm intrigued. I'm so excited for today's conversation. I have a lot of videos on my TikTok on beauty culture, beauty standards, the colonial beauty paradigm, and how we need to abolish her for us to all be free. And one of the most central ideas throughout my thinking on this topic is the idea that inclusive beauty is a myth, okay? It's something that's been invented by the powers that be, by beauty culture, by the beauty industry to co-opt and pretend to be changing the underlying power structure of beauty while keeping it actually the exact same and including people who are already closest to the Eurocentric beauty standard. So today we're going to be talking about the myth of inclusive beauty. Now, if it's one thing about me, I love a myth. I love the idea that I've been bamboozled, hoodwinked, and deceived. And this person, this dear angel sent from some beautiful divine place, is coming to unhoodwink me, undeceive me, unbamboozle me, and is coming to wake me up from this nightmare, you know what I mean, that I'm living. Or at least they're giving me new eyes through which to see, a new lens through which to view, a new perspective through which to understand. Was this what I was born to do? Like, I think so. Okay, anyways, it always goes where I'm like so nervous and terrified before I start, and then I'm like, actually, this is not so terrible or terrifying. Anyway, so let us get into her, this myth of inclusive beauty. I'm so excited, and I know I say that all the time, but I mean it because I get to decide what I'm talking about. So clearly I must be excited to talk about it, right? Okay, so in what way is inclusive beauty a myth? First, let's talk about what is inclusive beauty. What am I talking about when I refer to that? So in response to the phenomenon of a very exclusive Eurocentric beauty standard, there was so many Black people, fat people, queer people, brown people, people who were excluded from the beauty standard and continue to be, who have been actively organizing and protesting and challenging this beauty standard and pushing for more and more inclusion. This became diversity and inclusion, and this idea of inclusion within the way that beauty and fashion and all of these things are marketed to us became the dominant consumerist ideal. Like when you think of how advertising looks today versus before, it's more on the surface, it's more inclusive. But today we're going to get into why the actual idea of inclusive beauty has not been realized. Like that has not been realized. We still have a very exclusive beauty standard and a very exclusive system and hierarchy of beauty. And that word hierarchy is going to be very important today. So the first reason, I'm going to give I think it's 7, but babes, who knows? Like this culture is obsessed with quantifying everything, she says after quantifying something. But I think that it's going to be about 7 reasons why inclusive beauty is a myth, okay? The first reason is that inclusive beauty is only selectively inclusive, including only those who are closest to the Eurocentric ideal. Okay? Inclusive beauty is selectively inclusive. But listen to the paradox, listen to the oxymoron. Okay, you know what I mean? If it's selectively inclusive, what is it? Exclusive, exactly. So if it's a selective inclusion, if there are still rules, you can't call it inclusion because there are rules. You know what I mean? It's just saying that the rules have expanded slightly, but the underlying logic, culture, structure remains intact. Okay? So selective inclusion is not inclusion, okay? It is not inclusion. It's not radical inclusion. Radical meaning at the root. It's not inclusion. You know what I mean? It's not inclusion. You know what I mean? It's not inclusion. She's having too much fun. How does she do it? Okay, anyway. So it's exclusivity dressed up as, pretending to be, imposing, being the imposter, whatever. Oh my word, let's run that back. Okay, it's exclusivity dressed up as inclusivity. Okay, so the imposter is the inclusivity. The inclusivity is like wearing yo, this metaphor, man, it's so hard to commit. Okay, so the exclusivity gets dressed in inclusivity and goes out and pretends to be inclusive. The exclusion is dressing up as inclusion and being like, hey, how are you doing today? I'm inclusion. Bruh, we know who you are. We know who you are, okay? You cannot fool us. You cannot deceive us. We cannot be hoodwinked, bamboozled, and deceived. No, not anymore. Some days we literally can be, but on most days we're trying our best, okay? So anyways, so whenever I talk about this little idea of selective inclusion, do you know what I love to bring in? Euphoria, okay? Euphoria, the show, the cultural phenomenon, a very, very successful show on HBO, Zendaya, all of these people. Just to be clear, this is not a critique on them as individuals. I'm critiquing the show and the politics of selective inclusion as an actual form of exclusion. So let's just be clear on that, okay? Because, you know, if you come for the celebrities, you know who they come for next? You. And I don't want to be come for. I'm sensitive, babe. Like, leave me alone, okay? So anyways, Euphoria is a perfect framework or lens through which we can really understand this idea of selective inclusion. Let's get into it. You know what I had to do? Because I just had to do it. I had to create a diagram. Like, bro, like, listen, I'm in awe of this woman because the fact that I created a diagram, I just think that's really sexy. So let's make this a diagram where the outer circle is, okay, let's make this a diagram of all living beings. And in the middle, there's people who conform to the Eurocentric beauty standard. You know who they are? I don't need to remind you. Now, let's understand it's a circle, right? Meaning there are people who are much more close to the center and people who are further away towards the circumference, right? If we want to get technical, me being like the circumference. I'm so excited and thrilled by life. Okay, anyways, so what they have done, look at how the people who are clustered around the Eurocentric beauty ideal, well, they have proximity to power, proximity to whiteness, proximity to thinness, proximity to wealth, proximity to the people at the center, right? Okay, cool. So what has inclusion really been? Well, it's been, look at the arrows, pew, 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 pew. The arrows indicate the direction of selective inclusion that is masquerading itself as inclusion, but is exclusion, okay? Because it excludes everyone on the outside of the circumference, which is the majority of the people. And we need to be pro the people, okay? Which is what we are. Okay, so selective inclusion prioritizes people who are closest to the Eurocentric ideal. So they're already closest. So this would be like light skin, thinness, you know, wealth and the ability to dress in clothes that indicate that you have beauty capital. All of these things, you know, being mixed, a certain hair texture, curly hair texture, loose hair texture, long hair, features, you know, there's slim noses and all of these things. And I have a lot of beauty privilege, beauty capital. So I'm speaking out against this system, this institution, this hierarchy. Yes, it's the case, but don't be commenting like, oh, but you, yes, I acknowledge that I have these things, many of these things, okay? And again, that's what it is. What is it? It's proximity to the Eurocentric beauty ideal. Selective inclusion prioritizes people who are already closest to the beauty ideal. So let us talk about this. So as you can see in this little system, the dots, the people closest to the norm have been included. Who remains excluded? Everybody else. Like literally like the majority of all living beings are on the outside of this standard, and yet it's called inclusive. Like it's simply not. It's simply not. You know what I mean? And we'll get into this, but if it were to expand to be the whole circle, the concept would collapse because the concept is inherently exclusive. But anyway, let's get into that later. So another interesting, what else do you notice from this diagram? They're like, we're listening to this. We don't notice anything. But anyway, oh, by the way, I'll send this as a newsletter. So if you're listening to this, you can get the diagrams in your inbox. But I've tried to paint a picture with my words. What else do you notice from this? If you can just imagine, right? What you may notice is that the underlying power structure that this diagram suggests, she's suggestive, okay? And I love that about her, remains intact. Inclusive beauty has done nothing to challenge the underlying power structure of the beauty hierarchy. Wow. You know what I mean? it's the case. Inclusive beauty does nothing to challenge the underlying power structure of the beauty hierarchy or the beauty standard. The beauty standard is not being challenged. More people are being invited to participate. Let's imagine a runway show, because fashion is a good industry to take an example. So in the beginning, all the models were thin, white, cis women. Then the modeling industry was attacked. Blah, 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 you can't do this, you must not, da, 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 and then people, which is great work and incredible, and this is amazing. I'm just making a song, but I love this work. And what did they say? They said, okay, let's have more black models. Who were they though? Okay, they had to be thin, and they had to be have Eurocentric features, And then also, who was included most? Well, the black models who were light-skinned. Like Joan Smalls is one of the highest paid models in general. You know what I mean? And so, so that's point one, is that it's a selective inclusion, including those closest to the ideal. Okay, so people who are already closest to the Eurocentric beauty standard are handpicked from their group, their racial group especially, and said, okay, you can come. But the second thing that's important to note is that the underlying power structure is the same. Who has the most power in the modeling industry? It's not black models. So there's two problems going on. The one is that we're still being very selective. And I actually believe in a world without a modeling industry. Like, I don't think there should be physical models, because we all look the way we look, and like we shouldn't aspire to look anywhere else. And you're like, oh, but how will the designers sell clothes? They'll find a way. they'll find a way. But so anyways, that's a separate episode. And if you are a model, no hate to you as an individual. Again, I'm critiquing the institution of modeling. Like, should a society have physical representations of what it means to look perfect? Because that's what the word of model means. A model is a perfect example of something that other members of the group can aspire to be and look like and emulate. There should not be physical models. And in a society where there are physical models, I think there will always be pain and suffering. Now, of course, this modeling industry is mostly run by, white Western men. And so the problem is also the underlying power structure of these industries, and that people's bodies are being exploited, because a lot of models are really exploited. Like, we only think of the top paid ones, but so many models are so exploited in this industry, and as such, like, they need a world where they're also like protected. But I think there should be spiritual models, there should be emotional models, like people who we should aim to be more like emotionally, or like intellectually, or people who you leave them feeling like more loved and more love. There should be spiritual models and social models of like what the society we could live in could be, but I just don't believe there should be physical models. Anyways, I digress. Another conversation. The important thing to take from this little modeling journey we took is that the underlying people who have power in the modeling industry and in the media and entertainment industry, Barbie is a great example of this. It's still the white thin woman and the white thin cis man. Like, the people who are the beauty standard remain the ones, the original beauty standard, remain the ones who have the most power. Even though they may let others in, they will not give them access to actual power. And also, we should be against the hierarchy of power, such that some people have a lot of power and others have little. That is a hierarchy, right? So I think, as I just mentioned, Barbie is such a beautiful example of this. Barbie has been heralded for its inclusion, but the underlying power structure, who actually has power in the movie Barbie, it's very clear, and it's not even trying to be hidden. Like, Margot Robbie as the person and Ryan Gosling as the two like representations of beauty in the Eurocentric colonial imagination remain the people who the movie is about. Just because they may include others selectively and not fully include them, which is what we're going to talk about next, doesn't mean the movie is truly inclusive. These people, as you can see represented in this image, are side characters to her main character development. She is the main character, right? She literally is the main character. And that's not even trying to be hidden. And all of these people exist to prop her up as the main character. Like in the movie where they're all coming to consciousness, she is the savior of that process. You know what I mean? So it's really not about them. It's not about their personhood. It's not about their interiority, as in their interior life, okay? As in their, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? We don't get any deep insight into that. We see that with the Kens as well. And I know it's a big deal for these people to be in this movie because it's a huge movie, but I just want to say that the underlying power structure has not been challenged. Still, the white thin ideal reigns. So the power remains in the core. the core. The original people who were the beauty standard remain the people with power in every visual industry, modeling, fashion, entertainment, and media. The girl doesn't know what to say next. The girl doesn't know. Is this sounding country? Because that's not the intention. So on dismantlingracism.org, I found this little hierarchy. A hierarchy is a system or organization in which people or groups are ranked one above the other according to status or authority. And so, yes, this is what it is. It's a hierarchy. And the people at the top remain at the top. And they say, let's feed a few more people into the bottom so that they can, and like into the maybe mids and the upper echelons of society. But let's keep the power structure, the arrangement the same. Let's not say, what if these people at the top need less power? It's like, no. That's not the case. There's no redistribution happening. Okay? So that is point number 2, right? So we've done 2 points on why inclusive beauty is a myth. I feel like you're ready to move on. So let's move on to number 3, okay? This example of Barbie so greatly relates to reason number 3. While the image of marginalized people may be included, our deeper personhood and our leadership are erased or excluded. What do I mean by this? And listen to the duality that I'm trying to bring to light in this. It's not just that our deeper personhood is ignored, which is very important. So our backgrounds, our stories, we're often not given as much space to be complex in the public imagination. But also we're not really given as much room to shape our own narratives. So with this, I found these images by a person on Instagram called By Sarah. And thank you for your amazing work because I love these images. And she has this thing, it's literally from 2020, but remains so valid. And she says, let's talk about the Black best friend. Indeed, let's talk about her. Like, why would we not? Okay. And so she gives all these amazing images. Clueless is a perfect example. And then all these images of these Black best friend tropes in pop culture. And then she anticipates the rebuttal. But wait, don't you want more Black characters? Why is this a bad thing to have Black best friends? Now, if you're watching this, you know why it's a bad thing, but I'll just read it to you anyway. Black best friend characters exist solely for the development of the white character and are never given the chance to develop themselves. And later on, she says their deeper interiority is erased. And so that's also why inclusive beauty is a myth. It's often when they say, oh, this film is so inclusive, they don't mean, oh, it includes the Black people, the fat people, the trans people, the queer people's backgrounds and their story and what matters to them and like who they are. They just mean their image is included. While the image of marginalized people may be included, our deeper personhood and our leadership are erased. And by leadership, I mean, we may be in the ad, but babes, we're not in the room making the decisions. And all of this, I'm really thinking within the system because I'm trying to make a point. I'm not advocating for like, oh, we need more power in the status quo. Like, no, that's not imaginative enough. We need a whole new society, okay? That's not predicated on these harmful structures and where the structures end, where we can frolic, okay? But anyways, I just wanted to make that clear. Narrator. It was not made particularly clear. This is reason number 4. Inclusive beauty doesn't exist in a vacuum. This idea that more people are included in the beauty standard, it exists in a context, in a culture, and specifically it exists within power structures. Inclusive beauty exists within and upholds the wider structures of white supremacy, colonialism, cis heteropatriarchy, ableism, ageism, like it goes on and on and on. Oh, and capitalism, that's very important. These are the power structures that shaped the conditions under which this idea of inclusive beauty grew. Okay, so it exists within these wider structures, and it's almost being used as a ploy to pretend that power is changing hands when it's often staying in the same hands. Reason number 5, why inclusive beauty is a myth. Related to capitalism specifically, inclusive beauty is a profit strategy. It's a profit strategy so that corporations run by white Western men can reach more people. So it's a way of them expanding the people they can sell things to. But ultimately, it's about selling things to those people because they need us to hate ourselves so that we can keep buying things from them or consuming images of aspiration that they have shaped within their imagination, which is deeply rooted in the colonial imagination. So when we think of this idea of profit strategy. What do you think young people want beauty brands to care about most? You guessed it, like literally diversity and inclusion. So if you're seeing this as a brand and you're seeing, okay, 40% of Gen Z in the US think that the most important value that a beauty brand can have is to be diverse and inclusive, you're going to be like, let's take this marketing campaign and make it more inclusive. That links to the next reason. True inclusion would not ask us to modify ourselves, to optimize ourselves, because we are not here to be optimized, to alter ourselves, to improve ourselves, to embark on this never-ending process of optimization. That's not inclusion. Including more people in the necessity of and in the marketing of participating in that process is not actual inclusion. It's an illusion of inclusion. I saw this really cool essay called Beauty Standards Are Killing My People. And this was the image that it used from Beyonce's Pretty Hurts music video. And this person called Rachel writes, box eyes, a slim nose with the perfect jawline, inflated lips along with flawless, blemish-free skin, a minuscule waist, the widest hips that the human body could possibly allow for, and the thickest thighs are just a part of the long list of today's beauty standards that women must adhere to in order to be perceived as beautiful and desirable by society. And she's focusing on the impact that beauty standards have on Black women in particular. And, you may not relate to some of these beauty standards mentioned. And I just want to bring in a quote by Tracy McMillan Carton from her book, Thick and Other Essays, where she says that beauty is not actually what you look like. Beauty is the preferences that reproduce the existing social order. Ooh, isn't that so powerful? Beauty is not actually what you look like. Beauty is the preferences that reproduce the existing social order. So true inclusion would not ask us to alter, modify, and optimize ourselves. True inclusion would not ask us to be profitable. Okay? So if we really want true inclusion, it cannot be shaped by the forces of capitalism. They want to expand the surface area of your desire to be optimized, to be as big as it possibly can be, so that they can sell you on literally every morsel of your fiber of your being more and more products. And that is why you should listen to my episode on industrialized versus spiritual beauty, an idea by Jessica DeFino. As we wrap up this episode, the last reason why inclusive beauty will never be inclusive and is not inclusive is that beauty is fundamentally exclusive. We make note of something's beauty when it comes to human beings as something that is remarkable about that person, as in remarkable, something that you would remark on. Something that can include everyone is not remarkable. Everyone breathes, everyone is. We don't say, oh, look at her, she's a human. You know what I mean? So conceptually or philosophically, there is something inherently exclusive about beauty. And that is why I believe that this idea of spiritual beauty is what we really need to be moving towards versus industrialized beauty, which will never be inclusive. But the ability to access beauty is different from the ability to be seen as beautiful. Those are two different things. I believe in a world where we can all access the experience that is so deep in our human psyche of beauty. One where no one feels unlovable and no one is made to be unlovable by the society because of how they look as according to this Eurocentric beauty standard. And one where we don't simply have a new standard. It's like there's a club of beauty privilege and beauty capital and beauty access. And we're saying, oh, they made the restrictions to get into club a little bit looser. No, we don't want a hierarchy. We don't want a club. We want a park where everyone can access, where everyone can be, not a club where only some people can be. Like, we want to abolish the club. You know what I mean? We want to abolish the power structure of beauty. And we want to stop having a system where these people are profiting off of the hate that they're making us have for ourselves. So beauty is a fundamentally exclusive attribute. It marks something as distinctive or special. It cannot include everyone. And in our world, it has no intention to. Okay? Okay. My wrap-up thoughts are: inclusive beauty is not inclusive. It's a lie. We've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, deceived. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Beauty Bites. If you can, please do leave a 5-star review on Spotify and on Apple, as well as a little comment that's nice and kind and wonderful, because you know I'm sensitive, because that will help this podcast find everyone it is meant for. Number 2, if you would like to receive this in the written form, if you like the written word with all the diagrams, the quote tiles, all of the things, sign up for my newsletter. It's going to drop tomorrow. Okay. And like, it's like, what day are you listening to this? Who knows? It's besides the point. You know what I mean? But anyway, I'm sending you all the love. You are divine. Okay. I hope that you find rest, love, community, and also peace and silence. I love you all so much. I hope that you have a fabulous day. Okay, I'm signing off. Love you. Bye. I hope some paradigms have been shifted for you in today's conversation. As always, if you can, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify. Like, comment, subscribe. I love you so, so much. Okay, I love you. Join me on my Substack. Links in the comment section. Go there. Okay, love you so much. Love you. Bye.